when the Pelicans got DeJounte Murray in a trade, people were really surprised it didn't include Brandon Ingram going to Atlanta. People were like, oh my God, I am confused what the Hawks are doing because Brandon is way better to play with Trae Young than what they got. But guess what? Atlanta didn't even want Brandon. And now the Pelicans don't want him either. They're about to pay Trey Murphy, who got really good, which means Brandon loses his starting spot. Can you imagine? A max contract all-star player in his best years sitting on the bench. Their starting lineup would be DeJounte, CJ McCollum, Trey, Murphy, Zion, and they don't even have a center. So you'd think they'd just trade Brandon for a big guy. But right now, nobody wants him at all. Why not? Brandon's value was super high just 2 years ago. Back then, if they wanted Kevin Durant, they would probably have to give up Brandon Ingram. But the Pelicans said no way. They liked Brandon more than Kevin Durant. Now he's like poison. What happened? Well, this drop happened really recently. Oh, the NBA teams used to be obsessed with Brandon. He's obviously like a younger Kevin Durant, but not as good at scoring. He's tall and skinny with good shooting and ball handling skills. The Lakers picked him over Jaylen Brown with the number to pick. Back then, Lo was in a really bad spot after Kobe left. They missed the playoffs for years straight with no hope in sight. But then something amazing happened. Young Paul George wanted to be a Laker. He had led Indiana to conference finals in a row and was available for a trade. So the Lakers had the perfect piece to make that trade happen. They had the number 2 pick in 2017 or Brandon Ingram, but they kept the pick and never traded Brandon. They really believed in him. Now, Paul George just got his 4th max contract while Brandon is getting kicked out by a team that loved him just 1 year ago. Not only did New Orleans give him a max contract in 2020, he was like their hero because Zion is always hurt. So the Pelicans had to count on Brandon to save them. Zion had problems with the team bosses, but Brandon was just casually hanging out with his coach and teammates at playoff games. So 2 years ago, Brandon carried them to the playoffs by winning 2 play-in games back-to-back. Then, against the number 1 seed Suns, he was incredible, almost beating Phoenix in 6 games. Coach Willie Green said, I really believe, and everyone else believes, Brandon is one of the best players in the NBA. It's awesome to see him show that and see his hard work pay off. But in just 1 year after saying that, everything changed. Brandon and Zion didn't play well together anymore. And it was obvious they played better when only one of them was on the court. Then with 12 games left, Brandon hurt his knee and couldn't play. So during a really important play-in game against the Lakers, Coach Green kept Brandon on the bench. Even when Zion hurt his hamstring, Brandon still stayed on the bench. He came back strong against the Kings to get the 8th seed. So they really needed an amazing Brandon against the Thunder. Game 1 came down to the final minutes tied at 90. The Pelicans 3 offensive rebounds in a row, but couldn't score. They missed all 4 shots, but the worst was a really bad missed 3-pointer from Brandon. I'm talking about a brick that didn't even touch the rim. On the other side, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander calmly picked apart their defense to win the game. Brandon was bad at scoring and made mistakes, only 4 points in the second half because of Lu Dort. If one man can completely stop the other team's best player, you have no chance. So, of course, the Pelicans got swept 4-0. Brandon said from Team USA up to this season, it's probably the worst I've been in a New Orleans Pelicans uniform. I have to look in the mirror and see what I can do better. Before the season even started, before the injury, Brandon had problems with Steve Kerr. The coach moved Brandon to the bench and asked him to be a backup to younger guys like Josh Hart and Austin Reeves at the World Cup. Brandon ended up with only 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. What did Kerr not like about his game? In FIBA basketball, defense is rewarded, but in the NBA, offense is rewarded. FIBA is much more physical. Oh no, that hurts. So if you don't play defense, you can't be a poor man's Kevin Durant. You have to actually be Kevin Durant. And funny enough, KD's defense is way better than Brandon's. So this summer, Pelicans front office guy David Griffin promised big changes, and he delivered by getting DeJounte. But Brandon said he wants a max contract, and the Pelicans can't afford to pay that with Trey Murphy needing money too. So they can either sign him for less money, let him leave for nothing next year, or trade him now. We know the Hawks said no, and Steve Kerr's Warriors too. But there are other rumors, like Philadelphia, but they got Paul George or the Kings who DeMar DeRozan. The perfect trade would be Brandon for Jarrett Allen, the center, or the Magic's Wendell Carter Jr. But even though it would be a good fit, there's zero interest reported anywhere. The problem isn't Brandon's game or his personality. He gets along great in the locker room and he's been an all-star. It's his contract. People are okay paying for potential, but Brandon's past that stage. I mean, just look at that play-in. Game 1 against Oklahoma City. It felt like the old NBA versus the new. Not that Brandon is old, but he used to be the hot up-and-coming player. And now, that's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. See, with the new salary cap rules, if you make a contract mistake, it ruins your team. People are scared about being too expensive because of the dreaded second apron. Just look at the Denver Nuggets. For 2 years in a row, they lost Bruce Brown and Kentavious Caldwell, who are championship-level role players because they made a contract mistake. They have Jokic and Murray on max contracts, but Michael Porter Jr., that cannot happen. In the old NBA, you could pay a guy the max and just trade him later, but now it's like a death sentence. Nobody wants that. Just look at Zach LaVine. So what I think happens is Brandon will be forced to take less than the max. He's the first guy that this is happening to with the new rules. Unless you're definitely a #1 star, you're not getting big money. It'll happen with other players in the future like Julius Randle or Chris Middleton, who expect a max contract but don't get the offer. So this will make max contracts way more meaningful. I've heard so many people say over the years, how is that guy on a max? Players like Tobias Harris, Jerami Grant, Michael Porter Jr., Fred VanVleet, or back in the day like Chandler Parsons or Al Horford. Those types of max contracts are gone forever. It will now be a huge honor to be a max player, which makes sense. Only guys who teams know are true #1 or 2 stars will get it. It just so happens Brandon Ingram is the first player this is all going to happen to. He'll be the example we all point to when a non-max player asks for big money. So it will hurt, but could be the best thing for his career. I think Brandon is like Aaron Gordon. He was drafted to Orlando and compared to LeBron because of his football player type body. He never lived up to that though and got traded to Denver. Then as a number 3 or 4 player in a much better role, he helped win a championship. In Orlando, it sucked. Everybody was criticizing him for not living up to his potential. But that's okay because Gordon changed his role, took less money, and now is happy with his basketball life. He went from a guy nobody wanted as a number 1 to a role player every team would love to have. And we're at that exact same turning point in Brandon Ingram's career. But right now, nobody wants Brandon if they have a chance at Cooper Flag. Tons of teams are going to lose games on purpose for this kid. He will go number 1 in the 2025 NBA draft, especially after what he just did to some of the best players in the league.